So we learned about the for of loop to loop over arrays, which remember is an iterable, but we can also loop over objects, which are not iterables, but in an indirect way. Now we have different options here depending on what exactly we want to loop over. So do we want to loop over the object's property names, over the values, or both together? And let's start by simply looping over property names. And so remember, they are also called keys. Now ultimately we will still have to use the for of loop to loop over the array, but again we're going to do that in an indirect way. So we're not actually looping over the object itself. Instead, we're going to loop over an array. So let me show you how. So I'm going to call this day, and you will see in a moment why. And now of, and then I say object.keys, and we pass in the opening hours object. And now let's simply, to see what happens here, log the day variable to the console, and then I will explain what happened here. So indeed we get Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, which are exactly the three key names of the object. So we can see that here. So indeed, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So let's take a closer look at this mysterious object.keys. And let's do that here before actually. So let's just say properties equal object.keys, and then again opening hours. And now I want to take a look at the result here. And so indeed, it is an array with the three property names. Okay, and we can actually also use this to now compute how many properties are in the object. So let's say we wanted to print a string saying how many days the restaurant is open. That would be simple, right? We can just log to the console. We are open on, and then properties dot length. And now we get the number of properties here, of course. And so that's 3 days. Okay. And so this is also the array that we're going to be looping over. So properties. And that's why I called this variable here day, because this array basically contains 3 days. Now let's actually do something cool here and instead store this into a variable. And let's say open, and then str for string, and here a colon, because now using the loop, I will basically keep adding to this string. So open string plus equal, and then the current day. So day, and then a comma. And so here we are then essentially building just this string. So that's similar to something we did already before. And so the end is we are open on 3 days: Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Great. So that's property names. Let's write that here. Okay, but what if we actually wanted the property values themselves? Well, then we would simply use object.values. So let's also store this here. And of course, then we need to pass in the object itself. So that's again opening hours. Missing the equal sign. And now let's just take a look at the values. And indeed, these are exactly the 3 values that we specified right here. So this value here, right? So open 12, close 22, this one and this one, right? So before we had the keys, now we have the values, and there is no need to now loop over them again because it's going to work exactly the same as here. Okay? But now, to really simulate to loop over the entire object, we actually need the entries. And so entries is basically names plus values together. And we already saw the entries before. So when we looped over the array, and I think that's going to be somewhere down here. Oh, and actually I already passed it. So indeed, here it is. So here on the array, we called this entries method. And so the entries return the index number and the element itself. And so we can do something similar on objects, and that will then also return the key and the value. Okay, now it works differently on objects because it's not going to be a method that we call on the object itself. So here we had the menu array, and then we did that menu array dot entries. But now here we do it differently. So we use again object dot entries, and then we pass in once again the opening hours. So this distinction between the array and the object is important as we loop over the entire object. Okay, I actually run into that problem myself at some point. So that's why I'm telling it to you. But anyway, let's store this again into a variable. And so then you have all the three versions here nicely organized in your code. And let's take a look here at the entries now. And so as you might have expected, we now get an array. So all of these keys, values, and entries basically transform the object into an array. And then here we have first the key and then the value. All right. And so now we can use this to basically loop over the object. So for, and now let's start by writing the of. I will just call it x for now, and then we will take a look. So x of the entries that we just generated, and then let's just log them to the console. And so let me get rid of this one here. All right, so that's weird. Oh, it's because, of course, I want to log x. Oh yeah, that's correct. So now we have each key and each value. All right, now we want to print to the console a string like this. So on the weekday, and so that is the key. And so I'm using these variables here before I actually defined them. So to make it easier to say what we want to define. So for example, on Friday, we open at, and then we're going to have an open variable and close at close. So how will we do this? Well, just like we did with the arrays, we can use this structuring right here. So let's do that. The first one is the key, and remember the second one is the value. So we could do this, but we already know that this here is an object, right? And so therefore we can also immediately destructure that object here. So fair enough, open and close. So the two variable names inside of that object are open and close. And so here we specify exactly these property names, and so they get destructured. And therefore this works. So let's see that again. And so, yeah, so this is here the value basically, all of this, right? And so here we have open and close. And so that's exactly what we defined here as well. And therefore we then end up with the string here, which got all of the data out of the object into this nicely and neat string. All right. So this part here is necessary because the value itself is also an object. But if you had a more simple object with a simple value, then you would of course only do this here as destructuring, just a key and a value. And of course you could then give them other names as you would like. So here we can just call them day. We can use any name that we want. Awesome. So we're doing great progress here. And now it's time to practice that once more. So I see you in the next coding challenge.